I'm 100 years old now. I turned 100 inches this spring, and I did it sitting at my own kitchen table with the same chipped mug I've had for 30 years. Most of the people I loved are gone. Most mornings, I wake up surprised that I'm still here. They tried to put me in a nursing home 5 years ago. My daughter didn't mean any harm. She was worried. I had fallen in the garden, nothing broken, but it frightened her. She said, "Mama, you can't keep living alone like this." I remember looking around this little house, the curtains I sewed myself, the clock that ticks too loud at night, and feeling something in me stiffen. I said no. What kept me here wasn't strength. It wasn't good luck either. It was a small, ordinary habit. I started when I was 42 years old, without knowing it would one day be the reason I could stay in my own home at 100. Every single day I walked. That's it. Nothing fancy, no special shoes, no fitness tracker. I just walked. I didn't begin for noble reasons. I began because I was tired of feeling invisible. Back when I was in my early 40s, I had 2 children in high school and a husband who worked long hours. I worked too, part-time at the library. I cooked, cleaned, kept track of birthdays, made sure the bills were paid. My days were full, but I don't remember anyone looking at me. I was useful, necessary, but not really seen. I would wake up already thinking about what needed to be done. Groceries, laundry, PTA meeting. My life was a list. One afternoon, after dropping off some paperwork at the school, I didn't feel like going straight home. The house would be empty for an hour. Instead of driving back, I parked near the park and started walking. I didn't even change my clothes. I just walked in my sensible shoes along the cracked sidewalk. At first I was thinking about dinner. Then I was thinking about a phone call I needed to make. But somewhere along the way, I started noticing the trees, the way the light came through them, the sound my feet made on gravel. It was quiet. No one needed me for that hour. When I got home, nothing had fallen apart. The laundry still waited. The world hadn't punished me for taking 60 minutes. The next day, I did it again. It became my hour. Sometimes in the morning before work, sometimes in the late afternoon. I walked in heat, in wind, in the kind of cold that makes your nose ache. If it rained too hard, I walked around the mall before it opened. Just slow circles past closed stores with the other quiet people. I didn't tell anyone it was important. It didn't look important. It looked like a middle-aged woman trying to keep her weight down. That's what people assumed. But I wasn't walking to be thin. I was walking to feel like I existed. My husband didn't understand it at first. He'd say, "Can't you skip today? We're running late." Sometimes I did skip, but mostly I didn't. I learned to say, "I'll be back in an hour," and I would leave. Looking back, that was the first time in my life I did something every day that wasn't for someone else. In my 20s and 30s, I had been efficient, responsible. I said yes to everything. Extra shifts, school committees, neighbors who needed rides. I thought that's what made a good woman, being available. But availability is a hungry thing. It eats your edges. You wake up one day and realize you have no private space inside your own mind. Walking gave me that space back. The years moved the way they do. Quietly at first, then all at once. The children left for college. The house became too big and too quiet. My husband and I started sitting across from each other at dinner without much to say. We weren't unhappy. We just didn't know each other anymore. I kept walking. When my knees began to ache in my late 50s, the doctor suggested I take it easy. I nodded politely. Then I went home and walked a little slower. Not as far, maybe, but I kept going. There's something about putting one foot in front of the other that steadies your thoughts. Problems that seemed sharp in the kitchen softened on the sidewalk. Anger turned into something duller, easier to carry. I walked the day after my son told me he was moving across the country. I walked when my daughter went through her divorce and cried into the phone. I walked the afternoon my husband forgot the name of our neighbor just for a moment and laughed it off. That was the beginning of the forgetting. It started small, lost keys, missed appointments, stories repeated. We told ourselves it was normal aging. We were in our 70s. Of course there would be some slipping, but then one evening he didn't recognize the street we'd lived on for 35 years. He sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window like a visitor. That night, after he went to bed, I walked in the dark. I didn't even bring a flashlight. I just needed to move. I needed the rhythm of my feet to keep me from breaking apart. The diagnosis came the next year, dementia. Slow but certain. My world narrowed after that. Doctors' offices, medication schedules, watching the man I'd built a life with drift away in inches. He would look at me sometimes with politeness instead of love. That was the hardest part. Being treated like a kind stranger. I still walked. Sometimes I pushed him in a wheelchair when he could no longer manage the sidewalk. Sometimes I walked alone while a neighbor sat with him for an hour. I felt guilty for those walks. At first, like I was abandoning him, but if I didn't go, I could feel myself shrinking, my patience thinning, my chest tightening with something close to resentment. And I did not want to resent the man who had once danced with me in the kitchen. So I walked. When he died, I was 81. We had been married 59 years. The house felt enormous. The silence was not peaceful anymore. It was heavy. People brought casseroles for a while. They sat with me and told stories. Then they went back to their own lives. That's how it is. Grief is loud at first, then it becomes private. The morning after the funeral, I put on my coat and walked. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I cried the whole way around the block. I must have looked unwell, but I didn't stop. That was the day I understood something. Walking wasn't exercise anymore. It was the thread that kept me tied to the world. If I stayed in bed, I could feel myself drifting. Just a little. The temptation to let the days blur together was strong. No one would have blamed me. An old widow alone in her house, it's a quiet story. But every day I walked, I had to get dressed. I had to lace my shoes. I had to open the door and feel the air. I saw the same mailman, the same barking dog behind the fence, the seasons turning whether I participated or not. It reminded me I was still part of something moving. In my late 80s, friends began moving into assisted living. Some went willingly, some didn't. I visited them. Clean hallways, scheduled meals, televisions always on. It wasn't cruel, it just wasn't home. I would come back to my small house and feel a mixture of gratitude and dread. How long could I keep this up? At 95, I fell in the garden. I had been pulling weeds. I remember the smell of dirt, the shock of the ground coming up too fast. I lay there for a minute, staring at the sky, thinking, well, maybe this is it. But it wasn't. My daughter insisted I use a cane after that. I did. And I kept walking. Slower now, shorter distances. I don't go around the whole neighborhood anymore, just 3 blocks. Some days only to the corner and back, but I go. The doctors say my heart is strong, my lungs are good, my balance, for my age, is remarkable. They ask what I've done differently. I tell them the truth. Nothing dramatic. I just never stopped moving. But it wasn't only my body that walking saved. It was my mind. At 100, I still know my address. I still know my children's birthdays. I can still sit here and remember being 42, parking near that park, not wanting to go home just yet. I think about the small choices that shape a life, not the big shining ones, the quiet, repeated ones. There were so many times I could have stopped, when I was tired, when I was grieving, when no one would have noticed. If I had stopped then, maybe the stiffness would have set in, maybe the isolation would have deepened, maybe that fall at 95 would have been the end of my independence. You don't feel the cost of stopping right away. That's the dangerous part. The loss comes slowly. Muscles weaken in silence. Friendships fade without argument. A life can shrink without any dramatic moment. I didn't walk to avoid a nursing home. Those words never crossed my mind at 42. I walked because I needed an hour that belonged to me. But that hour, repeated for almost 60 years, built something sturdy inside me. Now, when I shuffle down the sidewalk with my cane, young people pass me. Some smile politely, some look past me. They don't know they're seeing the result of tens of thousands of ordinary steps. I don't know how much longer I have. At 100, you don't make long-term plans. I feel time the way you feel. A draft under the door. It's there. But tonight, I will set my shoes by the door, like I always do. In the morning, if my legs allow it, I will walk to the corner and back, not because I'm afraid anymore, not to prove anything, just because it's what I do. If you're listening to me and you still have strong legs, or even unsteady ones, I won't tell you what to do. I've lived long enough to know advice is often wasted. I'll just say this, the small things you repeat become the walls you live inside. I built mine out of footsteps, and at 100 years old, I'm still at my own kitchen table.